If you live in Canada, you know that CBC, CTV are state propagandists. They take the Liberal talking points and relay them to you. But the fact that no major news media organization has reported on the fact that just in the House of Commons, it was announced that an independent tax assessor, this is not a Canadian tax assessor, estimates that Brookfield Asset Management, where Mark Carney had spent the past 12 years of his career, hadn't even lived in Canada for 15 years, but had spent 12 years of his career, he oversaw their move to New York, underpaid their taxes between the years 2017 and 2022 by $6.5 billion with a B dollars. 5-year time period where Mark Carney was executive co-chair at Brookfield Asset Management, underpaid their taxes to the Canadian government by an estimated $6.5 billion. And now Mark Carney, who has spent his entire adult life outside of Canada, who is now using the Canadian government and his position to clearly illegally enrich himself. Again, the news media will never report on it, but he is clearly violating the Conflict of Interest Act time after time after time again, mentioning companies that he has a specific known financial interest in, his so-called blind trust companies like GE Hitachi, that when he's talking about $2 billion investments in clean energy, he is explicitly mentioning companies he has a financial interest in. But the fact that he claims to look out for the Canadian people and be concerned with the future of Canada, when it is now an independent tax assessor is assessing the company that he spent the past 10 years at the head of as the largest individual tax dodger in this entire country. $6.5 billion worth of taxes underpaid by Brookfield Asset Management, and the corrupt Canadian media will not even mention it to you. The fact that we blatantly, obviously, have a sociopathic corporate crook as our prime minister in Canada. Whether you look at the $80 billion deal that Brookfield struck with the United States of America to become what they claim in a joint statement as the clean energy leader worldwide. Meanwhile, Carney cannot get a deal struck on behalf of Canada with the United States of America. We now have 45% tariffs. Meanwhile, the EU's negotiated theirs down to 15. Many other countries have negotiated theirs down to 0. And good luck if you think Carney is going to be looking out for the best interest of Canadians when the USMCA comes up for negotiation. Good luck with that. There are now people who know the business community can tell you that thousands of Canadian businesses are being forced to think about leaving this country, going to the States because of the massive tariffs on key industries. $63 billion have already fled Canada since Carney was elected. Our GDP dropped a shocking 1.6% in the first quarter of Canada. It is transparent. Mark Carney is looking out for his own personal financial best interest. He is not looking out for the financial best interest of Canada. You look at Carney's assets, hundreds of stocks that have jumped 50, 70, 200, 150% since he was elected. Well, the Canadian economy trudges along. Of Carney's personal assets, again, the mainstream media never tells you about this, but over 90% of Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada's personal assets, are invested in the United States of America. This man is looking out for his own financial best interest and the financial best interest of his billionaire buddies at Brookfield Asset Management. The idea that he is negotiating hard on behalf of Canadians is so obvious. Just the lack of passion with which he speaks, the fact that he's using his time as Prime Minister to go private business meetings all across the world. He's in the UK, he meets with Starmer for a day, then he's meeting private business individuals. In Asia, he's meeting private business individuals. Carney promised during election season that we would see a radical transformation of the disastrous Canadian economy under Justin Trudeau and those forced green initiatives that have killed our economy that Carney pushed for. Now that he's been in office for 7 months and absolutely nothing has happened, Carney is out here talking about the process is going to be slow. It's going to take a long time. Canadians are going to need to sacrifice. We're not stupid, Mark Carney. We look at your rhetoric from 7 months ago during the election And you have done a total 180. During the run-up to the election, you were talking about, it's obvious, all a grift to get himself rich, but he was talking about how the Canadian economy would rapidly transform at a speed at which Canadians had not seen in a decade. Now, all of a sudden, he's been here for 7 months. Our economic situation has just factually gotten worse from the disastrous point it already was. 22% youth unemployment rate among males, 7.1% overall unemployment rate, the highest in the GDP when you consider, the highest in the G7. And when you consider people have dropped out of the workforce altogether, it's likely more like 10, 11%. And now, Carney, it's become more and more apparent. We knew it was a huge number, but $6.5 billion in unpaid taxes to the Canadian government during his time. And Canadians really think that this guy, this corporate crook, just look into his soulless eyes, the way with which he talks with so little passion, everything's humming, hawing, which is a clear sign of a liar, measuring their words as tactically as they possibly can because they know that they're lying. Duper's delight, the stupid grin on the man's face that you see all the time. What is it going to take, first of all, for an investigation into clear conflict of interest violations? As I said, he is blatantly getting in front of TV cameras and name dropping companies that he and Brookfield Asset Management personally have an interest in. How is that in the best interest of the Canadian people to be bumping GE Hitachi, GE Verbosa at your own person, at your news press conferences as Prime Minister of the government of Canada? It's also illegal. It's also clearly illegal for somebody. The Conflict of Interest Act clearly states that you may not use your position in the Canadian government to pump private assets that you are invested in, which is blatantly, obviously, there's no argument. We've all watched him in front of the camera do it explicitly, time and time. GE Hitachi is just the most recent example, but he's done it time and time and time again. And nobody in our news media mentioned it. Now I see no stories on this $6.5 billion underpayment of taxes. Well, he was a senior executive at Brookfield Asset Management. Meanwhile, it's become so clear to anybody who tracks this stuff closely that he's using his time as Prime Minister not to the advantage of the Canadian people, but to the advantage of Mark Carney. It's sick. We clearly have a corporate sociopath, a chameleon, a snake elected as our Prime Minister. We need to absolutely demand that MPs vote of no confidence when the budget is introduced on November 4th. And we need an election ASAP to get this traitor who never should have gotten near becoming Prime Minister of this country, who has spent his entire adult life outside of the country, who cannot speak for 1 second with pride about Canada, the hell out of here. Please like, share, subscribe, join, become a member, grab some gear, donate. Really appreciate every sorts. We have to get rid of this snake, Mark Carney.